All right. Well, welcome everyone to the I don't know, maybe second episode would be the most appropriate terminology for
Magnet,
this.
Chick Magnet 101.
That's definitely the second episode of the talk show, and it's the and today with good old Tristan here. I am actually joined by two good friends of mine, JoJo
What's up, everybody?
and Solus. How are you guys doing today?
Hello. Well, alive. So that's a plus.
Yeah, I'm grateful to be alive.
I guess wow, we're already going on the morbid end, huh?
No, no, not at all. Grateful to be alive.
I mean, he said grateful, so yeah, we'll go with that. Happy.
Steam,
Just happy thoughts.
Steam, I don't want you
We've
to upset me
dodged,
now.
we've dodged COVID-19 so far, so I think I'm pretty grateful to be alive.
Speaking about that COVID scenario, we're gonna actually go to Tristan here, who actually does, rather has the most unfortunate experiences because he lives in good old Boston, Massachusetts, and
Oh,
so since we're gonna get into this, so Tristan, how is it over there? Out of curiosity.
Things are dying down somewhat in terms of the amount of cases and all that. So statistically, it's looking better, but still, we've got the highest number in the state, but that's because of the population. It's not the highest per capita, but still a lot of cases. But the hospitalizations are down,
Mm-hmm.
the deaths are down. So all around, it's happening. I noticed you guys had three new deaths down that way, actually, today.
Yeah,
Today or yesterday.
in this case,
very unfortunate, but we did.
But yeah, last time we were talking about how things had to change in terms of like hygiene, and rather what would change after COVID-19. Before, which we will probably talk about the biggest elephant in the room. Beforehand, and how things didn't change, and we got a second wave, things would get a lot stricter. And I'm gonna actually just go around the table here. We'll first start with JoJo. How do you currently feel about the coronavirus situation?
All right.
Do you feel like
So,
do you feel like if the second wave happens, that they'll be a lot stricter than they already are? Do you feel like it's not going to happen? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
in my opinion, I don't think it is going to happen. Because I think after when COVID was, well, actually, let me preface this. There's been scientists that actually traced COVID to back in February. So we had COVID back in February. And no one ever really knew until the news started reporting it. The news reported it, or like let's say late March, and that's when the hysteria started blowing out of proportion. Now, here's the thing about COVID, and this is the reason that I don't think this is going to be a second spike, third spike, fourth spike, or spike Spiegel in that case. See, the coronavirus comes from a bat, so if it is an animal-based virus, it can even harm a human body. Because and I'm taking this information from my cousin, who is an actual veterinarian, 10-year veterinarian, by the way. And she tells me that a animal-based infection virus does not harm a human or has the same effects on a human as does an animal. It would take almost 1,000 years for that virus to mutate, so that way it can have some type of effect on the human body. So that's one thing that raised a white flag in my head. Secondly, a lot of scientists, specifically some medical doctors from Mount Sinai, had come out and they did a study on the virus using gene splicing editing technology that literally allows them to take a microscopic look at the virus. And what they saw in the virus, they said it was man-made because they can see different parts of the virus was stitched on, kind of like Frankenstein's monster. They literally saw different parts of the virus having parts of like other viruses and other organisms. And they came out with their research and findings and said, this is man-made. Now, I'm not surprised because the virus is coming out was released, or I guess accidentally released, depending on how you see it, from a Wuhan lab. And ironically enough, the laboratory has the same symbol as the umbrella corporation symbol from Resident Evil. The only difference is that the red part is actually blue. So I just find that super ironic.
I don't know that life imitating art, my friend.
All
Life
right.
imitating art.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
So in this case, Lewis, what's your take on JoJo's response? Actually, I'm a little curious because I know you're
Mine is by far different.
maybe because
Okay.
I know you like to be a little bit debative here. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, not debative, just really looking at some of the facts that are out there and what some of the science suggests.
Mm-hmm.
And so the science has followed the evolution and the genomes of the virus, and which is why they've pretty much concluded that it wasn't man-made, and that it was something that did cross over from bats to human beings, and that's been the same thing with some other coronaviruses that have happened. There's very often there are huge amounts of coronaviruses that tend to stay among strictly young animals, and there's always the concern that something would cross over. Now, as to whether it was made in a lab, I think that it might have escaped from a lab, but I don't personally think that it was created in a lab, and I've not seen any viable evidence to suggest that. At the same time, though, when it really comes to some of the lab stuff, none of us really know other than what we're told.
Mm-hmm.
So we tend to make choices about the things that we want to believe among those things, and because the science is at a level that is very, very high. The fact of
can agree.
Yeah, and the fact of downplaying it, well, let's go back to some of the dates. And so the earliest date, the first person in the United States that was on January 17th.
I can say that I do know for a fact because my wife actually went to the hospital with an unknown illness. We live in Fall River, Massachusetts, and one of our hospitals was actually stating that she was the sixth or seventh person that had entered that day. This was around January, February. She was about the sixth person who entered with flu-like symptoms who didn't have the flu. So I'm not trying to say that there are any reported cases any earlier than when people are saying, but what I am saying is there are some distinct, what I would hate to call coincidences that don't add up.
Mm-hmm.
Some irregularities with the truths and the stories that media as well as other doctors and scientists are coming up with a lot of conflicting information when it comes to this virus. That's something that I feel like a lot of people need to come to the same page and really start to look at what you guys are saying, the hard facts of what this virus really is. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not going to say this is man-made, but I do kind of agree with Lewis. It sounds like this did probably escape from a lab where they were doing testing on this virus to see the effects that it has on probably the creatures that it was infecting, to see what kind of issues are happening with the wildlife, because a lot of labs do research into viruses in animal populations to figure out how to, help that population survive possible extinction.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like it could have escaped from that lab from a bat that was potentially infected.
And there are some thoughts that really even say that it might have been around in November and not reported. So I know that the first recorded case of the United States was there was one case that was reported on January 17th as a specific
one actual confirmed. But like you were saying, I feel like there have been cases since even before that.
I actually agree with that. That I think that there was some that people weren't looking for that, and so
exactly because we didn't realize that was a potential anything at that point in time. So it wasn't something we were looking for in patients at the time.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it could have been misdiagnosed for quite some time, and we had no idea.
Right. I agree.
Oh, that's interesting. All right. Jojo, what's your take on that then?
Already gave my take.
Well, I didn't know. I didn't.
So, Jack.
My personal take? I mean, it's hard for me to have a much more personal take than it is because of the fact that.
So what's your objective point of view?
That's what I was getting at there. Jeez. All right. Out of all three of us, I would say I probably have the weakest immune system. I believe I do. And what's interesting is I so far myself haven't caught it, whether or not through strange stroke of luck or whatnot. And that's the weirder part, because I believe I'm in that age range where I might be considered a risk, but also not. And in terms of like the facts and cases, I don't check it that often. All my information does come from like U3s actually, most of the time. Because most of the time, go ahead.
Take on a little bit of this is my issue with what happened to the population in China, where it was affecting mostly and almost only senior citizens in a way where it was killing them. And now it's affecting a whole much larger age range of people. Like,
okay, because that again, when it came to the news of the virus itself, I was at the time.
There was actually a young girl.
Did you just cough?
Ended up dying.
he's got that.
Oh
no. But like,
I have to disinfect my mic now. My
you know what's funny? What's kind of funny is I was in Target the other day and had my mask on because the sign says you can't walk in the store without a mask, which I think is so ridiculous.
Yes, but what I think is kind of okay. What worries and makes me a little weirded out is walking into a bank with a mask on. Is they have you walk into banks with your masks on. That just, in and of itself, to me, feels like everything you were taught not to do as a child.
So
good one.
So walk up to a bank teller with a mask on and say, "Hey, can I have $800?"
You know, you should actually step it up a notch. Wear a ski mask, then ask for your money.
Slip her a note that says, "I want $800 in small bills, please."
or else I'm gonna cough on you.
Oh boy, but like my personal, but back to what I was saying though, like my personal.
Wait. Let me finish my story. When I was in Target,
all right.
So I was waiting in line at Target, and my chest had kind of like it got a little scratchy. So I coughed, and immediately everyone turned their head and looked at me with wide fucking eyes.
I mean,
and I'm like, I looked at all of them. I said, I don't have COVID.
But so when it comes to COVID itself, my knowledge of it is very limited. Like, unless Tristan or any of you guys bring it up to my attention, I have very little to say on the topic itself. The thing I don't have little to say, and ironically,
to be honest, I don't blame you on that because the media has been misleading people left and right.
But
depending on which one you watch.
But what I do know a lot of, and it's ironic that you bring up Target because this all goes into this, is the is the current protest that is going on. Now, I'm not going to get into the specifics of it. I'm pretty sure at this point a lot of people know what it's about, why it happened, why is it happening, what happened. What I want to specifically talk about, for me personally, is how the response of the president caught my attention immediately. Now, I'm not sure if
his response to the protest?
His response in general. If I'm not sure if you guys are too aware on that, but so as you know, during
you inform me.
I know, that's why. I'm going to get everyone else to
watch them.
I'm uninformed of what he said. I'll have to take a look into like his Twitter posts and what he said on the news.
I will get everyone up to speed because me and Tristan were looking at it as it was happening. But so as you know, during the peaceful protest there would be rioters or anarchists among them, and
obviously seeking to do their mischief and everything like that.
So when I'm not sure, Tristan could correct me, but I'm not sure if it was specific times or just at random times. Violence would be erupted, and it would be caused by both sides. Some protests
Of
were
course.
caused largely by the police force, depending on which state. Others, it would be due to rioting. So in this case, if we're going to talk about like who started what, I would say that both sides are probably equal in this term, because
I'd agree.
there's just probably not
Because-
enough. There's just not enough solid information on my behalf. Tristan,
And-
you can step in to
Yeah.
correct me on this.
So the only thing I really want to step in on is that one of the things that everybody's running together, and it's a big mistake, is they're running protesters along with people that are rioting. And so there's protests going on, and then there's rioting, and they're two different
Which are
things.
two exactly.
And so what we do is we discount one at the expense of the other.
Yeah, no,
And so
I
it's
definitely
important to not do that.
I definitely agree. I don't know why they were doing that. Because the way what I'm specifically talking about is just the rioters and looters. The protesters, me being part of it, as well as another good friend of mine who we actually both went yesterday before it got a little out of hand. At City Hall.
Oh, really? Where protests did you go to?
I went to the one in actually our hometown.
By Memorial Park or the Veterans Park?
The one at City Hall.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So specifically, and like I said, so in this particular point, my conversation of the protests are that there's really no problem with them. I'd say that when you talk,
I agree. I support everyone's. I personally support this protest 100%. And this isn't just as me trying to.
No, I get it. So
this is me understanding that this protest has a cause, and a cause that has personally affected and hurt millions of people throughout decades of just mistreatment and general abuse, and it's awful.
it is.
And the fact that people have been peacefully protesting about this for generations are now getting lumped in with rioters who are seeking to completely misuse the meaning of this cause in order to.
Well, that's what I'm getting
some
into.
sort of-
So hold your horses there, Solus. I know you want to get into this. So like I said, I've been following it very closely because I had to, because as none of you guys, the viewers, would know this, but the gentlemen, the people who are with me today do. I did adapt a new student who unfortunately had to fly back to Minnesota, so I had to keep a very close eye on that for his own safety. And so what I found was very interesting. I found that the response from the police department of each state was varied. I also found that sometimes they were in extreme, but what I want to focus on is specifically what happened in Washington, D.C. And I will talk about Boston, Massachusetts for multiple reasons. One, when I worked for the MBTA, when stuff was happening that did directly affect my old job. And also because Tristan lives in Boston, I have to also keep an eye out for there, because if anything happens, I need to be ready. In terms if he gets injured or whatever the case may be. So what was interesting was, and I'll actually try to find the lovely videos of the president doing this, is the president had held a conference, I want to say was it June 1st, Tristan? Or was it June 2nd? I want to say it was,
It was the second. I think it was Tuesday.
Yeah, I want to say it was on Tuesday, and the words he was using was very interesting. Part of it was how he would use military force to correct the problem if the governors could not do it.
Yes.
And that is alarming. That is
very alarming. That's something I heard about.
But it gets more. There's more to this than just that. So when he made this publicly announcement, during that time he did force protesters and to move. They actually shot tear gas. Police were just assault and battering. Just peaceful protesters. There's even an Australian TV crew that actually gets assaulted, and it was on live, by the way, which was interesting. But it seems that things developed even more, to which President Trump actually did call in the military force in D.C. It's To my
This
understanding,
is-
I'm looking more into it as we speak. Military has been included now. It's no longer just the National Guard in D.C. That's a bigger concern to me.
This is possibly, I'm going to say it right now,
Mhm.
possibly one of the biggest crises this country has ever faced since the Civil War. This moment in time, right now, is going to be a history point for the future.
Of course it is.
Depending on the way it is handled by not only our president, but more importantly here, our people, is going to be what is said in those history books. Now, I'm not going to get into too much of my personal opinion because I would be ranting and raving and being, well, an asshole. So I'll keep it more simple. The way the president is reacting to both these protests and this virus is probably the most unethical, unintelligent, and downright devastating thing that has probably hit this country, like I said, since the 1800s. It is just egregious the way that this is being handled. The president doesn't have should never have the authority to call a military on his own people. He is not a CEO of a business anymore. He is a public servant in the service of his people. He is the representative of an entire country. He is not a CEO. He is the president.
So
He's a representative
Mhm.
of all of us. And not only is the way he is handling these protests just, like I said, one of the most unethical things I've ever seen, he's mocking history. This is exactly what happened in World War II when Adolf Hitler rose to power. He used media, propaganda, and the spreading of misinformation to form a following of dedicated and unwavering, loyal followers.
and
it nothing you say against him will ever actually stick. It's awful. Doesn't mean anything. When everything he says, it's almost like seems like he can't do anything wrong. I think I'm getting more into my personal feelings. I'm gonna let everyone else have a turn.
I specifically I want to go with this in order. So I'm gonna let Tristan be the last to speak because he has the most to say out of all of us.
I believe.
In terms of just the situation at large. So Jojo, yeah, the floor's you.
It's all you, man.
Yeah. So, let's see here. I'm unaware of what he said or tweeted.
I am not entirely unaware, but
I just posted one of the
Mostly
references.
unaware. Mostly unaware of his most recent discussions and what he's been saying as of the most recent right now.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to post a few links here that that should give a general idea of what's going on in Washington, D.C. So, and I'll also go ahead and try to find his press conference. So for now, for now, Jojo, since you don't know too much, I am going to pass the mic over to Tristan. Because you do have the most to say out of all of us. Not only are you the wisest member, I'm not calling you old, I'm just simply saying you're the wisest. This out of everyone here, maybe JoJo, since he is actually from out of the country, Puerto Rico, I believe. Lewis, you are the most affected by this in terms of what this entire protest is about.
Absolutely. And I'm a big supporter of small businesses, mom and pop type shops, because I do like to circulate my finances within the community and help build the community. It's ironic because before I joined this chat, Joe called me and he asked like where I was, and I told him I was on my way from Westport, and I was actually coming back from a local dairy farm called Pascomantic Farm in Dartmouth, and they sell raw, unpasteurized milk, best milk I've ever had, and they also sell their own eggs. The eggs are delicious, but that's my point, that I like to purchase local than going with big agriculture and other big name brands. So it I don't like that, the fact that the looters are destroying small businesses when small businesses don't even have any part in this. They're just there. They're just there running their business.
Make a living. Exactly.
Exactly. You have businesses that took almost about 20 years to get to where they are now, being
No, that makes sense.
destroyed. Exactly. Now, what I see the looters doing is they're using the energy and the hype and the mass media from the peaceful protests to cover as a guise of their looting. Even though these people are looting in broad daylight. I think it was in Chicago or I think Minneapolis, where there was a looting broad daylight of a sneaker store, like a shoe store, and you had people running in and out. I seen the video on the news. I'll see if I can find the link to it. But these people were literally looting this store. It was a store that was on a main avenue, and the video was shot of the people running through the store, and then the guy swiveled the camera to the street, and you literally see streets like jam-packed with traffic, and this is being done in broad daylight. And I'm thinking, this is nuts. I've never seen anything like this. But I think these people. Go ahead.
No, I apologize. I'm just responding, not trying to interrupt.
Okay. So I'll wrap it up for you. So I think the looting is it's not helping the peaceful protest, and I don't think it's helping the memory of George Floyd, because I think George Floyd would want people to protest peacefully and make change through the courts, through changing laws, getting laws passed. Looting and rioting and destroying only causes chaos, and that's not going to help push any movement in the right way.
Oh, I definitely agree with that. But I think we're all in agreement with that. But so as I said, Tristan, being a Black American, you have the most to probably say about this because it affects you the most. Being realistic, and the reason.
Did you add yours in, or did you say everything you were going to say?
Well, the only thing I can really say, and it's something that is true, is when we were walking Boston one day, and I actually marked this yesterday. We were talking about it. Because where I specifically live in our hometown, racism isn't really apparent. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just simply saying from my personal growth, I would say more so bullying and depression and suicide was more prevalent in my particular youth in life.
I would say that is an accurate statement.
So,
and I would say that to add on to that is you're right. I don't really see much of the racism with people around here, more so with people from out of state who will move here.
And
that's usually where I will see it.
So when so one day when I was with Tristan in Boston, Mass, he was actually showing me around. I believe we were at near Park Station. I could be wrong because you would have a little bit better.
You're correct.
And this white guy just starts completely being racist out of nowhere. I was infuriated. I'm actually glad Tristan was there because to me, and I was so shocked to hear that. I was shocked because I was like, hold on. I live in the 21st century. I live in I don't live in Boston, but I'm told that Boston, Massachusetts is the home of America. It's the heart of America. It started this country. Why is it, and I think I said this directly to Tristan that day, like, why is this a thing here? Like, why is racism a thing? Like, there should be no need for this. There's absolutely, the ideology behind it shouldn't exist because, again, we're in the 21st century. The fact that one could use racism as a way to say that they're superior is laughable, considering there's no such thing as a superiority. It took me completely by the surprise. And today I'm still bothered by it because it's like, how can I sit here and say that my state, up until that moment, I truly believed Massachusetts was a phenomenal state. I believe that like all the other states, which are beautiful, I truly believe that Mass could not be like that. Simply because, again, from my particular background, being a Portuguese islander, moving to America, that was never really part of my life. Now, the other parts were, like I said, abuse, suicide, mental depression, like those type of things were very prevalent. But racism wasn't. And I still specifically remember my mother would always ensure that would never be a thing. Like, she would drill into my head, specifically when I had talked about it to her when I was a child, she would always say that racism is a laughable concept simply because it should not exist. And if I was ever caught to be racism, I'd be buried in the backyard. Is what she would say, because my mother was very, very against it. She also didn't have the belief that someone should feel they're superior by color. And
sounds like a fair punishment.
So to me, that's just how I grew up, where my mother was just hammered that in home, which is also why when I was also younger, being exposed, that moment of exposure, if you guys remember in 2000, when the same-sex stuff was going on, like same-sex marriage and whatnot. To me, I found it very...
Yes, I remember.
I was very, very confused because, again, the way my mother particularly raised me was to just accept everyone for who they are, and as long as they are not harming someone, it shouldn't affect you. And I always found that, even today, I find it a little bit weird to meet a homophobe. I find it super weird, but that could be because of how I was brought up. And
see, I can agree with you, considering with my childhood it was similar in the way of I was taught that as long as nobody's hurting you, then you just accept, or hurting someone, to just accept them for who they are, and that's just who they are. And with the talk about the same-sex marriage thing, like, I had someone personally in my family who was against it, and I actually had a deep discussion with them and about why. And a lot of it, believe it or not, I will not steer this conversation into this topic, but was because of his religious upbringing.
No, I
he
get
was
that.
taught that is not an acceptable. Like, he was perfectly fine with the concept of people being gay. He was perfectly fine with them having relationships and being together, but for some reason, marriage to them was a sacred thing between a man and a woman, not between two men or two women.
But this is...
That's just a concept that doesn't make sense.
So...
And that's because of the belief system.
But back to what I was saying, though. So with that in mind, this is why I can't say much, to where, again, my good friend Tristan, because of his situation, it is vastly different than mine's. And I've already said this, that if anyone was to talk to him like that, he better be around to keep me calm, because I cannot tolerate such thoughts. And that is why, Tristan, you do have the most to say about this, so I'm going to let you take the mic.
Okay. All right, so I'll just sort of preface this by the fact that it's kind of interesting hearing everyone talk about it, and it's an emotional thing to me. So all of this really impacts me very, 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 very much on a number of fronts. And what's interesting in America, that it's, for one, is that we're uncomfortable talking about race. People don't really want to talk about race, and I think that uncomfortable conversations are good. I think we grow by uncomfortable conversations.
Absolutely.
and we can have kind defense, so we can offend each other, and sometimes it's really to provoke thought. And and so when we look at things or we talk about race in general, it's funny because no one thinks that they're racist, or no one thinks that their area is racist, and all of that. But I would dare say that if I talk to some black people down in Fall River, that
absolutely, they
that
probably
they would
would
have a very
say.
different perspective,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know.
They,
And,
I
and it's not anybody's fault because
no, and you're right. You're right because it's
Because-
something that, as a person, not a person of color, it's something that I wouldn't see because I don't experience it every day
Yeah.
of my life.
and you don't have to think about it, so it's kind of
Exactly.
like you can see it, and when you do see it, you can react to it or whatever, or you can choose, you can be too busy and it doesn't have to really impact you. And so it's important to just sort of to understand that, and to also understand that the whole construct of race is a very, very American thing. It goes back to slavery and all of that. So on a human level, we're more similar than we are different. But this country was built on this concept of who was who, right? And in order to even promote slavery from its very, very beginning, that the systems had to be put in
Tristan,
place, and
I
then to
apologize
maintain that, yeah.
for interrupting you.
hmm
But whoever's fudge packing in the background, can you please stop?
I can.
Oh, that was me. I was tossing out like a wrapper in the garbage. My bad.
That's fine.
Okay.
Just
But that
so
was
we don't have
distracting. I
that.
wanted to listen.
Just so we don't have that. For everyone who's not speaking, just mute yourselves so that they can be heard the most. And if you don't know how to mute yourself,
enough.
just shoot me a message and I can do it on my end.
Okay.
Cool.
So I think that, and these last few weeks have been particularly rough. I'm a black man, been a black man for a long time, and I probably tomorrow will still be a black guy. And so in having that, and living it and walking it every day, that when I see what happened to George Floyd, it touches me as a black man, because that could be me. And the thing is that I've been around and heard people and known people that those kinds of things happen, even if it didn't result in death. And for a large period of time, people have said that didn't exist. They were like, oh, you guys are being too sensitive. It's not like that. Things are better. We've got a black president. Where, all of those little things that don't mean a hill of beans in your day-to-day. And when you talk about a system of racism, that system of racism is not about whether somebody calls somebody a nigger or not. Right, and so I was with Joe when this guy was going off on this rant about, he was calling somebody a nigger. He was going down the street. Joe's face was pretty shocked. But the whole thing of really thinking about the idea of race, it's not that. It's when someone values someone differently. So the system. And it's ingrained in our system, right? So that you can somehow or another, we see people very often that are a different color as not being worth as much in terms of what you pay them, what their value of their life, the value of their humanity. All of those things are discounted, and and again, it's entwined socially for us. And so I know that, a lot of people I know are not people that are people that aren't people of color, and and they're not bad people. But sometimes some of the things that they'll say, you just know that they don't understand. And I worked for a company once, and I had access to everyone's pay. I looked at the pay scale, and everyone that was doing similar jobs, almost everyone, I shouldn't say it was everyone, but most of the people that were doing similar jobs, if it were a person of color, they were making less. The people that were making those decisions, none of them were people that would ever call a person a name, and they all were people that were kind, and none of them would think that they had anything racist going on with them. And as a matter of fact, it was a relatively progressive company, and so you saw those kinds of things, and so that's some of the system of racism, and the system of racism kind of causes people to make different assumptions about people all the time.
Mhm.
And if you're a black man, you walk around always being conscious of race, kind of, because you don't get a chance not to. So I go into a store, and if someone is asked, if he does ask too much about, can I help you or whatever, I've got to process that and say, is it someone being helped, or does he think I'm going to steal? And I get on the elevator, and there's a white woman on the elevator. I don't want her to be scared. So I have to think about those things. And I think that that's a bunch of overhead that's bigger than us that just occurs. And so what happens is that sometimes when you're talking to someone that's not black, they want to just kind of brush all that away. They want to say, you can't feel that way. We've made a lot of progress. And the most offensive thing to a black person is when you try to negate their experience. And so that's my take on some of the racism. The thing that happened with George Floyd, horrible. I am encouraged because the people I see out protesting are of they're black people, they're white people, and that's encouraging, because sometimes it takes people of privilege to help people that don't have that same privilege. It gets recognized differently. And the rioters, I would never support rioting, but I will say this, that if they hadn't torn some shit up and they just were out there sitting down for a couple, for a week, everyone would have just gotten used to them being there. And I don't think that it would have spread as much. So while it is not good what they did, but I think that some of it was necessary. Certainly not looting. Stealing is stealing. Stealing is always stealing. But maybe tearing up a little stuff, I think maybe they needed to. And I don't mean small businesses. And, personally, I wouldn't steal anything from anybody. I'm like Mr. Straight and Narrow. Any of that. But I understand it's bigger than what my concept is, and that people are used to not being heard. They have to fight in some different way. And so some of the people that were tearing some things up, they were fighting in the way that they could fight. And there was a quote from Martin Luther King that said that a riot is the language of people that are not heard. And so we can make that about race. We also can make that about class sometimes, or whatever. So people that are poor and don't have a voice, or whatever. So sometimes the only way that they can fight is something that's non-conventional. And so I see that. And again, I know I'm kind of all over the place, but the current climate of the country has me all over the place, right? And I look at the president, who I have a lot of really bad feelings, but I just see this person that not only is making a joke out of the Constitution in terms of some of the things that he's doing, but he's also feeding on the division and all of the things that he says. And and I'd be going off the deep end, but I'm kind of like, okay, so he'd like to get us to this point that we have this race war almost, because the stuff he says, some of those things are so incendiary that it's kind of like, okay, and it's like, you guys look out, So the other night when he was talking about his law and order that he was going to do to defend people's rights, he threw in a little remark, including their Second Amendment rights, which wasn't part of the conversation. No one was talking about whether they were trying to take anyone's Second Amendment rights. People were talking about the fact that they were trying to bring some peace to the city, and he was calling out these troops. And what's interesting is that the Second Amendment rights are the very thing that goes up against the militia.
Yep.
And yet he was putting that signal out there. And even today, in the midst of the country falling apart in some ways, he makes a remark that says, the economy is coming back, and since the economy is coming back, we are. I think that George Floyd is looking down and very pleased at what's going on, and you can't say something that in a time when people are hurting, and they've had George Floyd's in their own life, whether they died or were beaten, and all of that. I've seen people beaten by police. I've seen police take people's money. And these were people of color, and it's not that those things don't happen to people that are white ever, but you don't hear the stories of a group of black cops killing a white person, or a group of black cops busting into someone's house and accidentally killing them, and say, "Oops, I got the wrong house." And so all of those things contribute, and we've got to at least talk about it. And the things that have happened with me, at least, is that a lot of my white friends have just got to reach out, not to really even give an opinion, to just say, "Hey, I don't know how you feel. I got no idea how you, but I'm listening," and that's all that you can do. And
I was about to say,
so,
personally, I think that's all we can do is just, as a white person, that's all we can do is listen.
yeah,
Because personally, my generation, as a younger generation, I may not have had a personal hand in a lot of the racism that people have faced in their lives, but I do know that people I know personally face it every single day. A friend I know very well, his name is Robert. He is one of my African friends. He is a very fantastic person, one of my best friends throughout middle school and high school. Always there for you whenever I needed to talk to somebody. Just a really great, personable person. And never once was the subject of color or race ever a part of our friendship discussions, because to me, Robert was never my black friend. He was just my friend.
yeah,
And
He was just a person, like me, like everyone else.
and I think
But he happens to be black, and the thing is, you'll face a lot of people who don't agree with my sentimentality and my mentality on the subject. Of everyone is just a person. We're all human beings. We're all put on this planet for God knows why, but we're all here. We might as well make the best of it and stop being assholes to one another.
and
Well,
and this is something I
Sounds-
wanted to bring up. Sorry to cut you off, Jojo, but now
how dare you?
I'm a very rude person, and it's weird because I can't even have the mentality of color this or this person Spanish or Puerto Rican. Like, I just can't, and it's actually really, to me, I find it weird when Tristan says that. Like, it's like, well, I'm black, and I find it weird because it's like, no, you're Tristan. Like,
No, but that's the thing. Color is a trait about a person.
and I think
Black people are black people.
absolutely.
African people, they
I
have a
again,
different beat. Everyone has. The best way I can describe it is they march to a different drum. Is everyone has a heartbeat, but not everyone's beat is the same.
no, I get that, but the reason why I'm bringing this up is because why I specifically told them yesterday that I can't understand this perspective, but I'm a little different anyways.
Yeah,
You know, I would call it that.
Yeah.
And truth, I just can't understand that perspective because, again, the way I was raised, I was never raised to take into the account of race. I was raised to look at what you do, what you say, and how you act on what you say. Anything else?
Well, that's what MLK said in one of his famous quotes, is that you do not judge people, or I should say, let me not paraphrase here. Do not judge people by the color of the skin, but by the content of their character. So a person can be a person can be of any skin color, but if they're a great person, a moral person, great person to be around, that lifts you up, and you can at the end of the day pat him on the back and buy him a beer. That's the type of person you want to hang out with.
Yes, and this is
That also
and
goes the same
let me
for the
and let me
inverse.
yeah, and let me jump in there just a little bit because if you saw my group of people that are significant to me, it's kind of like the United Nations. and I like that. But the thing is that so often in America, there are people that will say, "I don't see color," and so anyone that says that they don't see color, they're being disingenuous. And so it's okay to see color because we see color, and sometimes we react to color, and if we don't react properly, sometimes it's conditioning. It's subtle things that we have been programmed with, and you have to challenge those things sometimes. And you have to just challenge them, yeah.
No, and that's totally fine. That's why I'm saying, like, I have the most struggle with it simply because what I had said earlier is exactly how my mother raised me. And
he's absolutely accurate when it comes to the programming. It's already actually been tested on children. This teacher actually did it. If Jack could find an article, he could post the link. But she did a study about kids with blue eyes versus kids who didn't have blue eyes.
Yeah.
Exactly, very famous study showing that if you tell the children that because they have a specific character or physical trait about them, that it makes them superior to the other people, that automatically triggers an instinct to basically, it kickstarts racism.
Yeah.
To think that it starts them thinking that they're superior. It starts with the superiority complex. Then it evolves into subtle racisms where they'll look at the other children weird, or they'll make funny faces and give them dirty looks, or they won't drink from the same water fountains. And then it evolves through more and more subtle to more and more distinct ways where they won't even talk to the kids with brown eyes, or they sit at a totally different end of the classroom and won't associate with them. It shows how even just a subtle thing like that turns into a powder keg of just...
And I think it might be just because of that. Because like I said, my mother was subjugated to a lot of things. I won't go into that. And that's why I'm actually grateful the way she raised me. Because it
does have a lot to do with upbringing. You're right.
Yeah, but I also want to say, Jack, that while you can make that statement and all of that, and I know you, so I don't doubt that you were raised in a certain way, but the point is that this racism and this system of racism is bigger than how your mother raised you. It's bigger than what just fits in your thoughts. It's just a bigger thing, and it's great that she raised you, that way, and a lot of people are raised that way, and yet still it exists because you get unleashed into a racist world, regardless of whatever she gave you. Now that will impact how you navigate it, but even black people are raised in a racist culture. And so what that means is that I react to black people certain ways sometimes. Now that's crazy, but I grew up the same place you grew up.
And this is where the reason why I was bringing that all in is because of because like I said, it affects you out of everyone here. It affects you the most, Tristan. It really does, and I really wish I could do more. But as you know, as your famous line to me is we're a little different, so I can't do anything more than that. But what's interesting is this isn't just gonna hold on.
I'm gonna tell you something important, Jack. What's interesting is you don't have to do anything more than understand.
Right.
But
you just need to be willing to understand that this is something that needs to go away, and that it will go away only through effort and subtle changes done to our society as a whole by everyone collectively, not just by the individual.
Well, that, yes. And again, I already understood that, but my point that I'm trying to make, which everyone keeps seeming to be interrupting me with, so I love all of you.
That's our...
I'm gonna start, I'm just gonna start muting you guys. That's just what I'm gonna do.
I was waiting for
that. You invited.
That's pretty totalitarian of you, man. I like it.
You were at least invited one.
Yep, there we go.
So.
It's okay.
There you go.
I just muted you. It's fine. I love you. I love you, Solus. But back to what I was trying to say. So this is going to directly affect, hopefully affect positively and not cause even more fractures in America. The just general black man.
Boyo.
But what I'm also curious about is how will this also affect people like JoJo? And that is something I want to...
Me?
Yes.
Mm.
Because you are, to my knowledge, unless you change, you are a Puerto Rican. And people of usually Spanish descent also have faced a similar racism of, you're the working class. You're the guy I can give you a, like, barely $1 and you're just going to do any work that I ask. And that, to me, is also extremely wrong. And don't even get me started on that, because that'll just be a huge rant from me. So I'm curious to your personal opinion. For Lewis, it's a direct impact. This is a direct impact because he's from a long line of this type of, in terms of affecting him. Directly from America. While I don't want to say that you wouldn't fall under the same tree, because I don't know your family background, only you do. But I imagine it's the same thing, but subtle. Even more subtle, in fact, because it's almost like in our society, it's almost like accepted that Spanish-speaking people, like from Mexican and Puerto Rico, it's more like, oh, hey, if you have them, you just give them anything they want and they'll do any job you want. And it's almost like a casual thing, and it actually pissed me off. It actually really pissed me off once when I used to work for Lowe's customer service, and I specifically remember the hiring managers.
Okay.
Hiring managers were actually picking between two candidates who I actually got to meet, and they were pretty cool. One was a Puerto Rican, the other one was just an American white guy. And the hiring managers were willing to hire the Puerto Rican, and for word, they simply said, because we can actually give him a lower wage and he'll take, whereas the white guy will ask for more money.
So, Joe, I know you're directing this to JoJo, but I would say that that's no different whether they did that to someone that was Puerto Rican or whether they did that to someone that was black.
Oh, yes, no, I'm not saying that there's a difference,
Right.
but I do want JoJo's take as well, because because to me, again, I think everyone knows, like, I just find this appalling. Like, that type of mentality shouldn't exist at all. But JoJo, like I said, you yourself, similar to Lewis, like, you guys are subjugated to that type of thought.
Give me a second. I'm just trying to think of what I want to say here.
No, take your time.
While you're
Yeah,
thinking, let me
you
ask
brought-
you a question, JoJo.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, what do you look like? And no, I'm not trying to make a pass at you.
He says he says
Damn.
that he says that now until the money starts slipping into your pants.
Tristan is as debonair as I am. I am. So let me actually give you a little bit about my ethnicity. So I am Puerto Rican, but I did some research, and I'm. Let me see here. So I'm a quarter African. I'm I think maybe like 30% or 35% Taino Indian. Taino Indians were the Indian natives of the island of Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
And then I have whatever the percentage is, because I'm horrible with math, is from Spain, from the Basque region. I do tan really well, and when I did live in Puerto Rico, now I should also preface that I'm born and raised from Forest Hills, Massachusetts. So if you know where the end of the orange line is in Massachusetts, that's right. That's born and raised.
Okay.
On the playground where I spent most of my days. Had to throw that one in there. So I did live in Puerto Rico for 5 years, and because you have constant sun beaming down on you, no, I hear you. You're here.
Oh, hey.
I actually tanned like to the point that I was bronze. And what's funny is,
JoJo?
buddies of mine, we took a road trip to the western side of Puerto Rico, and also I should mention this: in Puerto Rico, it's very diverse, believe it or not.
Right. I'm familiar with that. I've been there a number of times.
Yeah, and it's really cool because I've met Jamaican Puerto Ricans, German Puerto Ricans, Italian Puerto Ricans, Scottish, Irish Puerto Ricans. I mean, the Puerto Ricans come in many shapes, colors. I've seen very light skin Puerto Ricans that speak better Spanish than I do. I've met.
I may be white, but I'm what you call a mutt. I'm literally a bunch of mixtures of everything.
Hey man, that's cool. Be proud of that. That's really cool.
I'm what English, Irish, Polish, French, Canadian. There might be a little bit of German in there, but I'm not entirely sure about that. That's something I would have to ask.
As they say in German, das wunderbar.
So what I'm gonna do, So what I'm gonna do is
hold on. I didn't get to finish my story.
No, you're gonna get your story. What I'm gonna do for just Lewis's sake, because they're not gonna see this, is I'm actually just gonna post one of the photos that I have of JoJo, and his rocking his sweet suit, and just so you get an idea, Lewis. Cause
let's take a look. Hey, are they gonna see this in the YouTube video?
No, but if you want them to, I could.
Hey, I don't mind it.
All right.
Ladies can hit me up.
Yeah.
Try to pull it all in, ladies.
But you have kind of a Latino look.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I've actually been.
The reason why I was asking you that was because I know that Puerto Ricans come in, people from Puerto Rico, who first of all, everybody needs to always be aware that those are American people, because a lot of people treat them like they're from someplace else, but they're not.
Yeah.
They're citizens.
Yeah.
And but your experience sometimes is because your experience is going to be somewhat of a person of color, because people look at you and they can tell, and it's really about what you look like in terms of how this thing really plays out. So I have a nephew that looks white, and he's not trying to pass for white or whatever, but he enjoys white privilege just because he looks white. And so the thing is that, one of the things that happens here in the States is it's all about that visual. I have a real good friend that's Puerto Rican, and she's got is her eyes blue? I think her eyes are blue. She's blonde, and you wouldn't even think that she was Puerto Rican, except for the fact that she is such a proud damn Puerto Rican that she makes sure that you know about it. But she always says that she understands what her privilege is, and she faces things like sometimes someone white will say something to her about Puerto Rican.
As a side note, I bet her Spanish cooking must be A+.
Oh yeah.
oh, God bless it. God bless it.
So we're gonna let
God bless Spanish and Portuguese.
We're gonna
cooking.
By the way, to Solus and Jack, when Massachusetts fully reopens up, there's a Puerto Rican buffet here in town that I got to take you guys out to. It is fantastic.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mute everyone and let JoJo finish his story, and then
your treat.
So go ahead, JoJo. The mic's on you again. Sorry, I didn't want you to get interrupted.
No, that's okay. I appreciate everyone's putting in the 2 cents at this. I enjoyed that, and just to harken back to what you guys said earlier, I think it's good to get into uncomfortable conversation. Because our growth is going to start outside of our comfort zones. And I think this conversation is going to help all of us, one, become more articulate and how we express our feelings. And two, it's going to allow us to do a little soul searching. I think that even as I'm talking right now, I'm doing some introspection that helps me vocalize how I feel about it. So, no, this is perfect. So, back to the story. As I told you, when I lived in Puerto Rico, I had a serious tan. I was probably like maybe 3 shades lighter than Wesley Snipes, just to give you an idea.
Okay.
and one was it back in 2009? Because I lived in Puerto Rico from 2005 to 2010. Me and my friends, we went on a road trip to the western side of Puerto Rico, where it's mostly everyone of Black, African, Jamaican descent. Haitian, literally all around. There's a lot of diversity there, and when we got there to the town, this town called what's it called? It's called Loíza. Beautiful town.
Yeah, that's actually not so far in the west. That's just a little bit. It's not too far outside of San Juan, actually.
Well, actually, there's two Loisas. There's one in San Juan, which I know you're talking about. Beautiful area too. Then there's another Loisa to the west of Puerto Rico. The way the people differentiate it is they say Loisa Sur, which is west, or Loisa Norte, which means north.
Really,
So
I
we went
learned
to the
something today. Yeah, because I only knew about the other one, and the people there are black, and the one that's not far from San Juan, the people are dark.
absolutely, and it's funny because I was talking to my friends. I'm like, yeah, I noticed there's a lot of Jamaican I said immigrants at that time, and my friend says, yeah, because the western side of Puerto Rico is closer to the Dominican Republic. A lot of Haitians, a lot of Jamaicans migrate over to this side of the island. And when we got to the town, you can immediately you hear the Jamaican music, the reggae music. You can smell the oxtail in the air. It was fantastic aroma. And you know what? Everyone was super friendly, really nice. It was the first time I ever heard a Spanish man speak with a Jamaican accent. Coolest thing I've ever heard in my life. And everyone that was there was really super nice. And when they saw me, they said, "Oh, where are you from?" And I said, I'm from Forest Hills, Massachusetts." They're like, "Where the fuck is that?"
Yeah.
And so I told them a little bit about my backstory, and they're like, your skin tan tells a different story. And I kind of looked at myself, and I'm like, you know what? I'm actually pretty tan. And everyone thought that I was from Jamaica or like the southern parts of Argentina. And I wasn't surprised by it because all my life, people have come up to me and they said, "Oh, you look pretty unique. I've been called Italian, Argentinian, Brazilian, Portuguese, Native American, all the ways down to I think someone said that I look like I'm from Poland." And I'm like,
Wow.
I'm pretty sure everyone from Poland is creamy white. So I've ran the gamut in terms of like what I look like, and I have to say, like, I think that's pretty cool that I have like all these I look like all these different ethnicities. So I think that kind of gave me a sense of appreciation of all the cultures that are out there in the world. And it kind of reinforces the way I was brought up. I lived with my grandmother for the younger part of my years. My grandmother is a Christian pastor, still preaches to this day. Her birthday was last month. She's 85 years old. And what's funny is that the last time I seen her was 2013. She hasn't aged a single bit. Love that lady. But anyways, she preached the gospel, and she's spoken to people from every denomination, every religion, people that of every color, gay and straight. And she says everyone's human, and everyone breathes the same air. Everyone bleeds the same blood. No one is lesser or more than everyone else. We're all humans, and we're all spiritual beings living in a physical body, experiencing a physical life. And that really resonated with me there. And so when I was growing up, I had a lot of friends of many backgrounds: Black, Chinese, Japanese, Italian. I've heard many languages. I've had many different types of cuisine. And growing up, culture and different ethnicities and different backgrounds really fascinated me because you learn so much about people, and you learn so much about cultures. And there was never a thought in my mind about racism because I liked everyone equally. And again, going back to what MLK said, you judge a person by the content of their character. And that's pretty much how the lens I've always viewed the world in. What else I want to tackle here? Oh, so Jack, when you said about the work class issue there,
yeah.
I've never been the type to say, hey, we're going to pay you this minimum wage job for a job that includes heavy labor. I've never encountered that before. As far as I've ever seen it, a lot of Puerto Ricans, we've always had like really good jobs in terms of like STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and mechanics. I think that's a stereotype. From my point of view, I think that's a stereotype where Mexican people or anyone of Spanish descent works menial jobs. Because I've met people, Mexicans, Brazilians, of most Spanish cultures that are CEOs, managers, work high-level positions, work in offices, work in aeronautics. I remember I went to I'm trying to remember the name here.
I mean, even you yourself right now, you have a pretty good job at Marriott International.
Absolutely, and I also know my worth too. So I know that I can bring a lot of value to any job that I work at.
Hey, we have a job opening at the MBTA. It's a call center.
Well, my first response to that is fuck that. Secondly, I already have a job. No offense, Tristan.
Yeah, no, none taken at all. But I would say this, so it's interesting. So one of the things that when you talk about people that are in Puerto Rico and in South America, right, and as well as in the other Caribbean islands, Dominican Republic, and all of that. So what happens is because of this, because all of these people are people that are descendants from the slave trade, and there's this saying, same boat, different stops, because that's what really kind of happened with spreading the slaves around. So the initial Africans that came to Puerto Rico were actually there, and they were slaves as well. They bred with both the Spanish Indians and the Spanish.
And that's where I believe that that percentage of my African ancestry comes from.
Yeah, it's kind of a real common knowledge thing. Because when you said your makeup just came directly from, as what you discovered about yourself was directly from if you looked up in a book about Puerto Ricans and what their makeup is. Sometimes it's not as perfect as yours. Yours fit the description like 100% to the T. And
thank you.
There are, but it's interesting. So with people from Puerto Rico, and I've met Puerto Ricans here and in New York and lots of places. So and you do have a lot of them that have really good jobs and all of that. They run the spectrum and they've been here. They've been coming back and forth to the mainland for a long time. So a lot of them have done very, very well. What happens is that a lot of Americans run Puerto Ricans together with Mexicans and Dominicans and all those people. Nothing wrong with all of them. But I very often hear people talk about Puerto Rico as if it's a different country, and like if you're not American because your country, Puerto Rico, and it comes so naturally to people. Sometimes I hear it from people that I don't even expect to say that because they should really know better. And
I think it comes.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think it comes from a perspective of not knowing what Puerto Rico looks like, understanding how the culture is there, and I think also people have a preconceived notion of Puerto Rico of being a third world island, and I blame that partly because of stereotypes, what you hear in the media, and what other people say about the island, and people just take that for fact instead of doing their own research, looking at videos and photos of what the island actually looks like. And secondly, if somebody wants to get a good idea of what a country or a city's like, travel. I think people should travel more often so they can understand cultures and get a worldly view, because what you hear from somebody's mouth could be entirely different than what you experience when you get to the place that they're talking about.
Of course. Of course,
Puerto Rico.
of course, the guy that works at Marriott is trying to sell travel. Look at pal, your job
Okay.
closed at 5.
I'm gonna mute you. All right.
Yeah.
So as I was saying,
Yeah, and I've it, JoJo, so I've
Oh,
kind
hey, I
of
can talk
seen
again.
places that I've been to Puerto Rico a number of times, and from a very long time ago. When I first went, I was relatively young, and the big thing about traveling is you do get to know that people are people wherever they are, and it's funny because sometimes we go to I was in Panama and I was out in a very rural area, and
Yep.
and I was with someone from Panama, and they talked to me about how important it was to not always look at things and compare them from an American point of view, because where we had gone, you would, from an American point of view, say, "Oh my God, those poor people."
yeah,
Really understood what was going on culturally. They weren't those poor people. They were doing fine and wanting the same kinds of things that we want here, and working a lot harder for them. And I think that and Puerto Rico's diverse because you've got
very.
a lot of it is very first world. Certainly, you get up into the mountain areas. Some of that, I don't know how extensively you've traveled in Puerto Rico, but there are some really very, very third world kind of areas that don't have running water and all kinds of craziness. And
Yeah.
and some of that has been the mainland America's approach to Puerto Rico. It's really interesting. So we've attributed to some of that third world living, and we've kind of mainland America has tried to keep Puerto Rico on its tits and to control it, and it's very interesting. So the economics of Puerto Rico and wherever those economics are failing are directly related to some of the mainland stuff that has happened politically and economically.
I also just want to point out real quick
Oh, yeah.
that although I say I'm muting you guys, I actually haven't muted any of you. So this entire time you actually could have talked. You weren't muted. I just say that I'm muting you because I can. Although I could just mute all of you, I don't see the need to do that.
So,
Hey, thanks, Jack.
so it's funny that you mentioned regarding the first world, third world perspective, because in Puerto Rico, the metropolitan area is very well developed. There's tall buildings, a lot of commerce. They built a raised railway, so they have the trains that are on like the tall trams, kind of like in Florida.
It comes right into San Juan.
Exactly, and it's very well developed in the San Juan area. But when you travel further out into the island to where the big mountain and jungle areas are, there are a lot of houses that they look shoddy, and they look like they don't have running water. They look like they don't have electricity. Where the door there's no door at the front door. And you can literally see into the living room, and you can see like chickens and fire animals in the back.
Yep.
And that's true. That is true. There are some homes that are like that, but the people that inhabit them are some of the smartest people I've ever met. I met mechanics that had homes like that, and they make a really good living. And that's just like kind of the way they were brought up. There's a lot of old generation of Puerto Ricans that kind of have that what we call the jibaro. A jibaro is the person who kind of like lives in the mountains, kind of like the quintessential person who lives off the grid. They hunt for their food. They don't use electricity or gasoline. They create fires every single day.
Yeah.
It's kind of that sentimentality. That has actually changed with just the millennials and the Generation Z over there in Puerto Rico. Because it's technology and was it what's that? What do you call it? The industrial the industrial not revolution, but the industrial picks up over there. It definitely further progresses the island. Crap, kind of lost topic here. But yeah, so there is that perspective that you're going to see when you travel around the island.
Absolutely.
But as for overall, it is a developed island. A lot of natural resources that they use in commerce.
Solus, yeah,
Hello?
we can. Yeah, Solus.
My God!
Are you
Victory screech!
All right, so just to explain a little bit here,
Oh my God, I spent the past 5 minutes trying to get back into this chat. I have no idea what happened, guys. I'm sorry.
So I'll get you up to speed. So I was talking about how in Puerto Rico.
Dark and
What did you hear up to? What was the last thing you heard?
I was hearing Tristan speak, and it just cut right out. He was saying something about the northern this.
I'll fill you in. So
My brain is not good at the moment. Sorry.
We was talking about how Puerto Rico, the way it looks, and how people view it, and I was telling them how there are metropolitan areas in Puerto Rico that look highly developed.
Was the north and the west one? I can't remember the name.
Oh,
Loíza. So here's us. So
I got up to the point where Tristan had started talking about it, and then he cut out.
Oh, you've been
wow. Yeah, you've been out for a while, man.
Yeah, like we've been.
All right,
trying to get back in.
Yeah, we've been trying to fix this technical problem, so I do apologize on that.
I see. Well, here I'll break it down to you in a few short words. Puerto Rico's fucking awesome.
It is, and also I agree with all of you. It is America, not another country. It is a part of America. Deal with it.
So Puerto Rico is a territory or a property. Both the words are interchangeable of America. It's not a state. However, people, the denizens of Puerto Rico say, let's become a state so that way we can also create more commerce,
business, healthcare, all that stuff. They can start
exactly
pumping more economy into Puerto Rico, and it would be great. It would be awesome to see that that state thrive.
Well, here's the ironic part. It's definitely thriving at the moment. A lot of commerce, a lot of business.
Like
COVID.
You said, it's a beautiful country. Beautiful.
Yes. Oh, you're preaching to the choir.
Look,
I was sipping pina coladas at least once a week.
I've never gotten to see it, but I imagine on one of the hilltops, it's got to have the most beautiful sunset views. And you probably
absolutely.
know which one. You probably know which one has the best view.
Everywhere. No matter where you are in Puerto Rico, the view is fantastic.
Yeah, it's really nice. Cities, all the cities and towns, they have very different flavors to them.
And that's also the thing about Puerto Rico is, like you guys were saying, is it's super diverse. And personally, this comes from someone who loves to cook. But I think one of the greatest ways to experience people's culture is through their food.
Yeah, Tristan. So when are you gonna make me food, Tristan?
I feel like
I'm curious to what you make, man, because I cook every day too.
What kind? All right, what kind do you want? My kind of personal fusion is I throw in anything, and I will make it taste good.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I throw in a personal request? Can you toss in some adobo in that?
Dude, adobo is always a good ingredient, but
absolutely.
But I like Japanese style cooking. I like Spanish style cooking. I love Jamaican oxtail soup. Fantastic. One of the best things I've ever had in my life.
So one thing I love
Hallelujah.
is I love how we have probably 3 cooks, Solus, Tristan, and JoJo. And here I am. I'm like, if I could throw it on a grill, it's good for me.
So JoJo, what is your favorite thing to cook?
Favorite meal to cook? That's a good question. I should mention that I've had lots of I've had lots of food from different styles of cuisine. I love Italian. I love Middle Eastern. God, I love African. When I first tried oxtail soup was actually from this really nice lady that I was sitting beside on an airplane flight to Puerto Rico, and she was visiting family, ironically in Louisa, and I remember she was eating some soup and it smelled so good. I'm like, what is that? She's like, oh, this is oxtail soup. And I said, it smells fantastic. She's like, would you like some? I'm like, let me think about, yes, I would like some, please. And that's when I had my first taste of it. But my favorite meal to make is...
That ass?
Oh, see, that's dessert. The favorite meal to make is pastelón. And pastelón is the Spanish version of lasagna, where what we do is we swap out the spaghetti string and we layer it with plátanos or plantains, specifically when it's sweet.
Oh, sweet
and
great.
Yeah,
great
we put sweet plantain. You still have the beef. You can still add the cheese. We tend to skip the cheese and we'll add in was it marinara sauce, and then we'll put the cheese on top. And I'll tell you right now, it is so fucking bad for your heart, but it's so fucking good for your taste buds.
All right.
It's delicious, man. It is so fucking delicious. And pastelón is it's not something everyone cooks every single day because it takes a fair amount of time to prep it and then bake it the right way. So when you pull it out, when you cut that square chunk and you lift it up and you got the cheese stretching like that shit was Gumby. Oh, it's so good. It is so good. But it's something that's made like during like a birthday party or a get together, or folks coming from out of town coming to see you. You make pastelón. But when you hear somebody say, "I'm making pastelón," you bet your ass is gonna be fantastic. Yeah.
So we had our two professional chefs talk, Solus and JoJo. So Tristan, stop hiding. Tell us the secrets.
See, I didn't get to talk.
Tristan, do you use adobo?
I use adobo sometimes. I use sazon a lot.
That's the good stuff.
It's kind of like
is the good stuff.
How can you? I am never without sazon in the house. If I get low, I'm out getting some. I use it with everything.
In Little Portugal, it's all about that Goya packets, bro.
Yeah.
It's all about them Goya packets.
Or that crushed red pepper. Oh, I love my spice.
No, fresh crushed red pepper from a Vovo.
I mean,
is the best. I mean, it has to be.
You're not wrong.
It has to be fresh crushed red pepper.
You're not wrong.
And actually, JoJo, on the topic of favorite foods to make, actually, one of mine seems like a very interesting dish until I add a bunch of things to it, and it's my udon noodles. Sounds very simple. You just boil your udon for 8 minutes to 10 minutes, depending on how you like it. If you like it chewier or softer, yeah. Then I get into the broth, which is what takes a while. One of my preferred ways to do it is, if you have the time to do it, is you're gonna cook the broth the day before, so it's prepared for your noodles when you want it, and you'll do it with a little bit of beef bones, fish bones, and things like that, fish skins, maybe some oxtails if you're like me and you really want to explore. But that I don't always have the time to go in too depth, so I'll put in something like store-bought beef broth, or that's usually the one I go with. I'll add a little bit of brown sugar and teriyaki sauce, because it's a really good flavor combination. You want to add Jack over here has the proper crushed red pepper, some fresh crushed red pepper as it's boiling, because it steeps into that liquid. You add a little bit of water.
Right, the peppers that he had to dig up toiling in his backyard.
Oh yeah, and he crushed them by hand. Come on. with a
Right.
pestle
Guys,
mortar.
this is a
This
trade
is-
And he blessed it.
This is done.
And he had
properly.
his grandmother bless it with a Catholic prayer.
Look at first
Exactly.
off, look at we don't talk about Vavo like that. Come on now.
So yeah, you add a little bit of that crushed red pepper. Now, I usually don't add. I apologize, teriyaki sauce. I add regular just soy sauce, because once you add a little bit of minced onions and that brown sugar, that basically creates teriyaki sauce. That's kind of what it is. So you add a little bit of soy sauce, brown sugar, and some minced onion into that with a little bit of crushed red pepper. Let it steep for about 10 minutes, 20 minutes, let the flavors get all the way through it. Then what I found is a really, really good binder for some reason for all of the flavors, the sweet. You can add a little bit of sour, but the sweet, the spicy, and a little bit of salty is you'll add a little bit of milk into it. Once it's all boiled, you'll turn the heat off and add like a quarter cup of milk. Yes.
And broth?
Yes.
Wow, I never heard that. That's some white people stuff. That's amazing.
Actually, believe it or not, in Thailand and other places, they have what is called hot pots. And one restaurant specifically specializes in milk hot pots. These are
Get out of here.
basically dipping soups that you'll dip meats in, veggies and stuff, and you'll actually drink the liquid itself.
Yeah, there's a hot pot in Providence. It's called Lei Mei Hot Pot.
Pots.
Yeah, there are a number
Yeah, me
of
too, man.
in Boston as well, Quincy.
Yeah, I've been to one in I've been to a hot pot. It was a buffet hot pot in
That was
downtown Chinatown, Boston.
That was
There's
nice.
several of them downtown Chinatown. They're pretty good.
That hot pot was actually my inspiration for adding that little bit of milk into the broth, and it actually, if you don't add too much, it actually basically creates a perfect binder for all of the flavors. It doesn't thicken it up to the point where it's like, I don't know, like a gravy consistency. It doesn't get to that thick consistency. It's kind of like a little less than a chowder consistency. A little.
Oh. I remember I had a hot pot one time, and on the menu.
You ever had clam chowder without potatoes?
No.
New England clam chowder?
Because that sounds like blasphemy to me.
I agree. I mean, okay, so what really sounds like blasphemy to me, I'm sorry to all New Yorkers, I'm so sorry, is Manhattan clam chowder.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. I didn't ever heard of Manhattan clam chowder.
Clam chowder. You know what I mean?
Tomato
I like that as
sauce.
something.
Is it like pizza bites in it?
Tomato. They use tomato.
Tomato.
Instead of,
It's like
it's a tomato
soup
base.
almost, or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Like if like Campbell's tomato soup had a bastard child with New England clam chowder.
Without
Yeah.
it's not as creamy though.
Oh yeah, then it's a bastard child.
Yeah.
oh yeah.
I'll have to try it out. That sounds pretty good. I do like tomatoes.
You'll have to try out my udon noodles, because that's just the broth. Sometimes I like to go extra fancy. I grate a little bit of ginger, some garlic always goes in there, by the way. Fresh chopped garlic, minced garlic always goes in there because it has to.
So another good Puerto Rican dish.
I'm Portuguese. I'll add green onions, ginger, garlic into that soup, and then I'll add.
I like that conviction there. I'm Portuguese.
I'll add either fried pork
Jalapenos.
chops. Nope, fried pork chops or a nice thick cut steak. Hello.
Hallelujah.
Hey Jack, can you mute me for a second?
Yep. He actually got muted.
So as I was saying, a really good Puerto Rican dish that I make, kind of once in a blue moon, is a dish we call mofongo.
Oh,
And
oh,
you know what I'm talking about?
yeah, be still my high.
You know, Hey, like once you finish your plate of mofongo, it'll give you the itis within 2 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'll be sleeping with your napkin around your lap.
Yeah, there's a Puerto Rican restaurant. There are a number of Puerto Rican restaurants in Boston. There's a particular nice one that's down in the south end of Boston called
What's it called?
Gigantes.
Cliente?
Yeah, with a silent G. So it's like
spell it out for me.
yeah, give me 1 second.
Okay.
I always pronounce it incorrectly.
Yeah, my when I lived in Jamaica Plain, there was a Spanish restaurant about 2 blocks from where I lived, and it was called Mi Corazón, as stereotypical as that sounds.
Yeah.
And it already shut down now. It shut down years ago, but they made amazing mofongo. And for the people who watches this video, mofongo is a well, damn, that's actually. I think about the first time I'm actually explaining it. So mofongo is where you take a lot of plantains and you boil the plantain, and then you mash it together. So it's basically like mashed potatoes, but from plantains, sweet plantains.
Yeah.
And then you put it into a bowl, and then you flip the bowl upside down so it comes out in a bowl shape with concavature inside. And what people do is they fill that hollowed part of the mofongo with meat from anywhere from carne frita, pollo encebollado, which means it could be anything from fried chicken, it could be steak, it can be carne asada. And what people will do is they'll put in they'll drizzle sauce on top of the mofongo. They'll put camarones, shrimps around it.
Yeah.
And it is a dream come true.
I've got the spelling of that restaurant. It's
okay, shoot.
Yep, it's Vejigantes.
Vejigantes. Okay.
Yeah. And it's in the south end. It's in the south end of Boston, almost in downtown Boston. But nice atmosphere. It's the food's pretty authentic.
I'm actually writing this down. I definitely want to hit up this place and see what it's like.
Yeah.
So Jojo, you know how I said I wanted to take you around Boston? Yeah, you could blame Tristan for that level of exploration.
When
that you were in Boston.
Well,
I did before I moved to Puerto Rico, in 2005 I lived in Chelsea.
Okay.
So
which was
Tristan,
short right outside of Boston.
So, not to cut you off, Jojo. Yes, our hometown signature sirens.
Our hometown anthem.
Yep.
Sing it.
It's a beautiful symphony of sirens and loud whistles. So take a moment to appreciate this.
Tristan, believe it or not, Jojo actually lives in the same hometown that we do. In fact, what was it? We could talk more about this off the air. I'm so mad. I'm so salty.
As usual.
I mean,
be any flavor, Jack.
Look
to be salty.
Look at Tristan stood me up. I was very heartbroken.
Ooh.
You have to suck it up, man.
Left you at the altar and everything.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yep. Made me look like the jackass.
But your mother did.
He traded you for the Puerto Rican lady that cooks at the restaurant.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, their cooking is phenomenal. So I'm not gonna lie. She's got you on that, Jack. She's got you.
I mean, to be fair, I mean, you're right. But no, so usually what was going to happen is every Saturday, me and Tristan hang out. And since now...
You also put bleeps. You also put bleeps, so when we cuss, do you hear the beep?
Hey,
No, I'm not that skilled.
hey,
Okay,
Jack,
cool.
Don't worry. If you even put my real name on the chat, it wouldn't matter. People don't know how to fucking pronounce it in the first place?
Okay,
Everyone looks at it. Devin? Like, no, bro. It's clearly spelled.
look, we're not gonna even talk about pronouncing names. It's so bad. But back to what I was saying though.
I mean, mine's the most
Okay.
legible. I'm Thirstmaster
Okay,
69.
I mean, you
So-
are. I'd say that describes
Okay.
you accurate. But back to what
So,
I was saying.
A lot of people don't think this. Okay, so I find it weird. A lot of people don't think this affects white people. I'm trying to like not make this a race thing, but at the same time, a lot of people don't think it affects white people when it comes to mispronouncing names. Because sometimes we have stupidly complicated or stupidly spelled names for absolutely no reason, and I don't get it. My own people don't know how to write names for shit,
Look at all I have to say.
especially mine.
Look at if we were gonna talk about that, I think Tristan could
If we
definitely.
want to talk about the English language for a goddamn second, let's talk about the fact that in the 1700s we had 3 ways to spell the word the.
Look at. I'm just
You
gonna.
kidding me? Like THUH. Like who spells it that way? The.
Look. If we're gonna talk about pronunciation, Tristan can back me up on this. The amount of times people get my name wrong. It's a 3-letter name.
It's so bad.
No, I don't even know because
Makes no sense.
while I'm in a just to let you know, since I'm in a call center, for those who don't know, you're not supposed to say your last name. So I just say my nickname, which is 3 letters. It's a very common nickname. And I've gotten everything from Jeff, Jack, to Joshua, to what was it? And then oh like it's
Did you ever
Okay.
get?
Ho.
Have you ever gotten called Juan before?
And be like, yo, what's up, ho?
Actually, I have, believe it or not.
I'm like, you are my ho.
That sounds like a day. When you work in the MBTA call center, that's just something you're gonna eventually be called.
That just sounds like a daily shift at the MBTA. Let's be
You know,
real.
the proper response when somebody calls you Jeff is you gotta say, my name is Jeff.
Exactly. My name is Gary.
But back to what I was trying to originally say is this Saturday I'm hoping that everyone's available. Looking at you, Tristan. Looking at you, because I wanted to do something with all of you, but you know, I got stood up, so you know.
Oh.
Sniffle.
You-
I know.
You gonna cook
At the
food?
altar.
You gonna throw some food on the grill? Or what's up?
Hey, if you give me some food to grill,
Yeah,
I'll
man.
do it.
Are you marinating steaks in the refrigerator right now?
No, I'm not.
No,
I'm
you
sorry.
best be dry aging those in the refrigerator. Right?
Basic bitch.
Oh. So, but no.
Y'all
So
don't even know how to dry age meat in the fridge, basically.
we don't need to do that anymore.
Yes, we do. It's called
Yes, you do.
flavor enhancing.
Absolutely.
Look,
You know, that's the reason why there's a stereotype that white people food is tasteless.
look at
Oh my
all
God.
I have to say
Okay.
is
one of my favorite jokes on that subject is British people. They traveled all around the world looking for spices, just to find out they don't like any of them.
that was bad.
Yeah.
It was bad, but
See,
that
we-
was honestly
see-
one of my favorite jokes about how white people don't like flavor. My friend Keith one time commented that his mango was too spicy. I was like, bruh, what?
So speaking of
I
so,
literally,
You know, I have to say, I've heard this.
connection.
I've heard this. I heard there's a rumor that, and I have never seen it in my life till I watched this SNL skit. But I guess white people put raisins in their salad, specifically the macaroni
I've seen
salad.
Dude, I've seen people put craisins and stuff in salad. Okay, first off, I'm gonna say something. I'm gonna say something to white.
Oh, so it's
white
real?
people, right? I'm gonna say
That's
something to
real.
all-
They do
Can I
that.
say something? Can I, as a white person, can I say something to all white people right now? Your macaroni salad fucking sucks. It's great.
I mean, if you're adding craisins, yeah, it's gonna suck. That's how you destroy macaroni salads, putting in craisins. What the fuck are you thinking?
Oh my god.
oh,
Look, to the people who are watching this video, don't add raisins to your macaroni salad. That shit just makes it taste bland.
so something I did want to share. It's actually a little bit of a work story from the MBTA. Yeah, I'm bringing this story to the full front.
So should you continually name that place?
Yeah, I can because it's a public domain. It's fine.
Yeah, people. He meant the ABCD.
Absolutely.
I know. I
The
meant the
BCBA.
I meant the RGOB, and if you can't figure any of that out, then that's fine. But anyways, so one day at
You're
my lovely work,
Underestimating the powers of people on the internet.
I'll give them a hint. It's
If-
literally
if
the
there's a
colors of the
deterrent-
subways.
If there's a determined, if there's a determined troll, he'll look for it.
Yeah, the colors he's referring to is black and white,
Oh,
not orange, red, green, and blue, and purple.
and the fairy.
Oh, man.
But besides that,
Purple dragons?
and not the dragons.
And not when you combine it all together, you get Captain Planet. No, not at all.
Sweet.
So no, so
Keep
one
it
day,
real, you know.
so one day at work, because I never actually shared this story with either of those two, but Tristan knows. Tristan knew this story very well. So I had this guy. I don't even remember his name. I call him the Colonel.
Okay.
And
Colonel Sanders, some damn good chicken.
so this guy calls in, and the first thing he says, honest to God, was, "I am a colonel of the current no, it wasn't. It was the current United States Army. I'm looking to start up the militia en masse so that we can start." What was it? Like it was so bizarre. Like, oh yeah, it was like so we can get so everyone in the MBTA can get a pay raise of Tristan. What was it? I remember telling Tristan this. Like I specifically remember telling him it was like stupid numbers. It was like at least like
That's an underground way of recruiting people.
Like,
Calling through the call centers.
it's like
Uncle Sam wants you.
is like what was it, $500,000 worth. Just call center reps get a pay increase, and then he goes on to how like but the MBTA need to send the T police to his exact location in the military to have him extract from a mental ward. And I'm like, sure, dude. And he's like, just to let you know, there's also bombs placed around the entire city. And I'm like,
And you're working here?
and I'm like,
Hey, that guy's a suspect.
no, he's just insane.
Mm.
Because
Is he
a lot
working
of
there, or is he? Oh, he's a caller. Got you. Okay. No, absolutely.
yeah, no. So
Absolutely.
what's funny is it got to the point he would call the T police so much that they told him like, sir, just call customer service. They'll take care of you just as fine. And when you have the police to go, yeah, this guy's off his rocker, just send it over to T police. You know, it's. I don't even know how to describe that lunatic. And trust me, I worked.
Fine.
Look, I've worked with us. I worked with Starwood Hotels and Marriott, and there were some crazy calls, but they were
Absolutely.
Have anyone swore at you?
in the MBTA like every other day.
Yeah, you get sworn at every day.
In the MBTA call center, yeah, you can. It's happened. Like I've had a day where like every other call, I was just getting sworn at just because people were mad for they didn't get their $2 refund, or
Oh.
or the
I'm
rent.
sorry. They tell you off because of a $2 refund.
You don't understand. When it comes to poor people, it gets insane.
Well, in this case, because it's Massachusetts, that $2 can go towards a Dunkin' Donuts coffee. So that's money
Exactly.
wasted. So I can see where their frustration's coming from.
But what's interesting is that very often the people that really want to fight over $2 or something, or people that live in the more affluent suburbs.
Actually, you've got a point. It's usually
Yeah.
the more affluent people who are the ones making the bigger debacle about
Like for
$2.
example,
Yeah.
another
I've
good-
seen that before.
So this is another interesting customer service story that I had, and might as well. We're here now, and so there was this college student, and Tristan also knows this is one of my more favorite air quotes, by the way, stories because it just shows like how well I just cannot deal with these type of people. And she was asked, she was like, well, can't you give me a reduced fare? I'm like, I can't. Your student pass has to go through your university.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, well, they won't give me the refund. And I'm like, there's nothing I could do for you then. And she's like, this is totally unfair. I go to this type of university. I'm going to get a better job than you. I demand you to give me a reduced fare.
I would have told her I could care less.
And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, there's nothing I can do for you. Is there anything else I can help you with? So she hangs up, right? Her mother calls, and I get her.
Oh.
And
wow, that must have been fun.
And her mother says, this was the first thing she says to me. She's like, I didn't even say my intro. Like, I was about to be like, oh, thank you for calling. And then she cuts me off, and she goes, there's an associate named Jack. So let's say my actual name there. Named Jack, and he told my daughter she can't have a reduced fare. And I go, that is correct. And she goes, who the fuck are you? I'm like, the same guy your daughter called. She's like, who the fuck are you to tell me that my daughter, who goes to X university, who has a...
Oh, God.
That she can't get a reduced fare. And I go, simple. The university's the one that's telling you this. And she goes, what? I'm like, the MBTA does not give out the student card. They instead... The university is the one that gives your daughter the card. If the university doesn't want to give your daughter the card, then there's nothing that can be done. Simple as that. And she's like, well, who the fuck wrote that rule? And I'm like, I don't know? Question mark? Now, the worst I ever actually had in Starwood would be like some of the more would be more of the customer elite, is what they call it now, when basically when a premier.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I didn't really have too many problems with the elite people.
No, I'm talking about that's what. No, Solus, you weren't the. Sir, I'm gonna stab you
off for a second.
I can cut you
Sir,
off.
sir, you're being rude.
So
I understand that being rude, and I have been this entire time.
So Solus, you're not gonna understand what I'm talking about because you weren't there for the Marriott changes. So let me be more affluent.
I wasn't there for the Marriott changes, and you are correct.
Sir,
yeah, so let me
So continue.
So let me explain. Let me explain
Sir,
what I'm talking about.
Detained, sir.
Oh boy. So let me explain. So you would be more.
Are you not entertained?
You cannot board the plane wearing parachute pants, sir.
Unfortunately, sir, we cannot give you a refund because there wasn't 20 towels inside your bathroom.
So we're gonna talk about. So we'll talk about this. So Tristan gets to see. So Tristan gets to see our side of it. But no. So let me just get you up to speed, Solus. So do you remember Premiere? From the social structure.
Yes, I remember.
So it was like it was Sales, SPG, Premiere, and then Premiere Plus. So
Yes,
Premiere got converted into Loyalty. And then later on, they were like, "No, that's too much of a loose term," because they were doing test runs with the temps. So they instead made SPG and Sales into one, and then they called that Loyalty. So then they started calling Old Loyalty / Premier Elite Customer Service.
Okay, so again, back when I was in the nest and everything like that. So whenever I would get Premier or plus preferred guest customers, it usually wasn't too bad because they knew exactly who they were talking to. So most of the time, I would get the person be like, "Hello, my name is so and so," and they'd be like, "Hi, I'm a SPG, whatever their status was, gold, diamond, preferred," and they were like, "I want to talk to whoever. Usually I would get, I don't know why I'm talking to you. I want to talk to." Sometimes I would get an ambassador call on accident, like somebody who was trying to talk to their personal ambassador who couldn't get through, and those were usually very quick. Can I get transferred over to someone who can help me? And I'm like, "Yep, absolutely." Usually goes right over to assist and/or the other button who can handle at the time, whoever the hell that person was.
Yeah, the policy is that you first ask them if they want to be transferred to the ambassador. if they say no when they say, hey, I just want to book a reservation, then you're free to go ahead and book that reservation on their behalf.
No, I'm saying I would usually get I like to be transferred to my ambassador. That's usually what I would. That's usually what I would get.
In my experience, I had quite the opposite.
Oh yeah, you had quite a lot of opposites.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, I'm pretty lucky. All the ambassadors I spoke, all the not ambassadors, the I forgot the name of the level, but essentially the SPG members who were like high up.
Yes. The
elites, we'll call them for a namesake. They were like, no, you're cool. I'm going to book a reservation with you. And I've had like really cool conversations with some of those guys. Yeah. Now, what's funny though, on the opposite, I never had any of them say, I want a refund because I couldn't find the clock in my room, or there were a certain number of towels. The people who actually gave me those stupid complaints and the ones that always want to flaunt their title was SPG Gold, who were lower on the totem pole.
For me, it was always the issue I always had were the Star Wars preferred guest people, the people who were just regular first tier. Those are the people I usually had the most problems with.
No, the most problems that I had specifically was
What do you mean I can't get a refund? I'm SPG.
It took so much effort sometimes not to say what felt like to their face. Sir, you are a member of a free program. Stop expecting something to be handed to you.
So one thing that I had the biggest problem with was the platinums, actually. I remember in training, they're like, the platinum guests are the easiest. Every platinum call I've ever gotten
I usually got nothing but disrespect.
Oh, not only did I get disrespect, I
got nothing but disrespect.
They always gave me a headache. They were always like, what do you mean I can't get this for cheaper? It's like, I'm sorry. And they would go, I'm a platinum member. I spent X amount of X. And it's like, okay, I don't give a fuck.
I agree.
What do you mean I'll get access to the club lounge? Well, ma'am, this is a 4 Points. They don't have a club lounge. What do you mean? And then I'm like, what do you mean?
Man.
What do you mean? The room doesn't exist in this hotel.
It's like, ma'am.
And then the reply is, I'm SPG Platinum.
Oh, no.
That's always the reply. It's SPG Platinum.
So what ended up happening, what was it? There was another call, too. I'll never forget this. I just walked into the call center, and me and JP...
reliving old memories.
Me and JP just sat down.
Good times.
Oh wait! This woman, I'll never forget.
When I was called an asshole one time.
I will never forget the guy who wanted to install a mirror onto his bathroom ceiling. Never forget that phone call. He was trying to book a room at the W. I booked the room. The W. Yeah.
Yeah, no. So what ended up happening was this woman called for the Sheraton in China. I can't pronounce his name because it was a Chinese name hotel. And the thing she says to me is, "Are there 3 sinks in the bathroom?" And I go, "Most of the time there's one." And she's like, "I won't book any hotel in China if they don't have 3 sinks in the bathroom."
Wow.
Did she give an explanation on why she wanted a room with 3 sinks in the bathroom?
No.
So sometimes you'll have more sinks and depending on the hotel in China, and it'll be due to the fact like the water in China is like really, really jacked up, and so you'll have one.
It's very polluted.
That you would use for miscellaneous things, and then you'll have another one that you will use if you were going to if you're going to get anything to drink, and that's in a high-end hotel. In the lower-end hotels, you got to get bottled water or something or another.
I had a lady. I'll never forget this. She said a lady had called in to the corporate customer service line when I was working corporate customer service. We'll never fucking do it again. And she wanted to call in and complain about a hotel stay she had in China. And I asked her what happened. She said that when she was in China, she utilized the bidet. And do you guys know what a bidet is?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so she used the bidet, and then two days later, she said she got a yeast infection. The moment she said yeast infection, I hit the mute button within like the speed of light because I fucking died laughing.
So JoJo, hold on.
She got a yeast infection from a bidet.
Is that actual grounds for a refund, JoJo? Is that actual grounds for a refund? Does that count?
You know what's funny is that I was racking my brain.
Is that covered?
And you know what? No, it's not covered. Insurance? It's not covered because we don't know how the hell you're gonna get a yeast infection from using a bidet.
Yeah.
So, quick question.
You shouldn't have any contact there.
So, quick question.
Yeah, obviously, she shouldn't have washed her coochie with the dirty water, but.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
God.
So,
I thought about the fact of how dirty the water is. I mean, the water is really dirty. It's really dirty.
It is.
So,
it's dirtier than the Taunton River.
So, just because we do want to do this, in case for those who don't know what a bidet is, JoJo, go ahead and explain that.
Give me a second here. I'm just finishing up this macadamia.
I can explain it. It is a device that people have in toilets or next to toilets mostly that you sit on, and it shoots water up into I'm just gonna say it, your asshole, so that it washes it, so that you don't have to wipe because it washes it, and it's kind of like a different toilet because then it spirals down the drain and it's gone.
So what's unique about the bidet is that it doesn't work like a toilet where it doesn't flush. It has a spigot, and there's usually like a knob right at the end of the spigot that you slowly twist it, and it'll adjust the pressure of the water, and it's essentially for cleaning your bunghole.
Oh man, so
not gonna censor it.
But but we're civilized people. We use baby wipes.
all right, so I think here would be a pretty great stopping point for this Friday's talk show. If there's any last closing remarks you guys want to have, go ahead.
Victory screech.
Ladies, hit up your boy.
All right.
Oh, God.
So we'll see you guys next Friday.
Cool.
No,
but in all seriousness, I think this was a really good conversation. It definitely helped me definitely give my opinion on the situation, and it actually helped me to self-reflect a little bit. And it brought me out of my comfort zone, which I enjoy. I like that.
In closing thoughts, I would agree. It was a conversation that kind of opened my eyes a little bit into how a lot of what I do, even if it's unconscious or not, does affect the people around me. And honestly, it makes me a little more conscious about the way that people act around other people. And I think it would help me notice more about the little subtle things that go on unnoticed that happen every day.
All right. And you, Tristan?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I thought it was good. It was good.
Tristan, a man of very little words.
Yeah, I have my moment.
I agree. No,
but you can hear the sage wisdom.
Exactly.
So,
Thank you.
Like I said, for our viewers, enjoy the rest of your night and stay safe.
As always, Wakanda forever.
Good night, guys.